Chapter 6. She Laughs Too Much. Meantime, notwithstanding awkward occurrences and griefs she brought upon her parents, the little princess laughed and grew, not fat, but plump and tall. She reached the age of 17 without having fallen into any worse scrape than a chimney, by rescuing her from which a little bird-nesting urchin got fame and a blackface. Nor, thoughtless as she was, had she committed anything worse than laughter at everybody and everything that came in her way. When she was told, for the sake of experiment, that General Clanron Fort was cut into pieces with all of his troops, she laughed. When she heard that the enemy was on his way to besiege her papa's capital, she laughed hugely. But when she was told that the city would certainly be abandoned to the mercy of the enemy soldiers, why then she laughed immoderately. She never could be brought to see the serious side or anything, and when her mother cried, she said, "What queer faces Mamma makes, and squeezes water out of her cheeks. Funny, Mamma." And when her papa stormed at her, she laughed and danced around and around, clapping her hands and crying, "Do it again, Papa, do it again. It's such fun, dear funny Papa." And if he tried to catch her, she glided from him in an instant, not the least afraid of him, but thinking it was part of the game not to be caught. With one push of her foot, she would be floating down in the air above his head, or she would go dancing backwards and forwards and sideways like a great butterfly. It happened several times when her father and mother were holding a consultation about her in private. They were interrupted by vainly repressed outbursts of laughter over their heads, and looking up in indignation, saw her floating at full length in the air above them, when she regarded them with the most comical appreciations of their position. One day an awkward accident happened. The princess had come out into the lawn with one of her attendants, who held her by the hand. Spying her father at the end of the lawn, she snatched her hand from the maid's and sped across to him. Now when she wanted to run alone, her custom was to catch up a stone in each hand so that she might come down again after a bound. Whatever she wore as part of her attire had no effect in this way, even gold, when it thus became as it were a part of herself, lost all weight for the time. But whatever she only held in her hands retained its downward tendency. On this occasion, she could see nothing to catch up but a huge toad that was walking across the lawn as if it had 100 years to do it in. Not knowing what disgust meant, for this was one of her peculiarities, she snatched up the toad and bounded away. And there's... but that picture doesn't pertain yet. It had almost reached her father, and he was holding out his arms to receive her, and take from her lips the kiss which hovered on them like a butterfly on a rosebud, when a puff of wind blew her aside into the arms of a young page who had just been receiving a message from his majesty. Now it was no great peculiarity in the princess that, once she got set going, it always cost her time and trouble to check herself. On this occasion there was no time. She must kiss, and she kissed the page. She did not mind it much, for she had no shyness in her composition, and she knew, besides, that she could not help it. So she only laughed like a musical box. The poor page fared the worst, for the princess, trying to correct the unfortunate tendency of the kiss, put out her hands to keep her off the page, so that along with the kiss he received on the other cheek a slap with the huge black toad, which she poked right into his eye. He tried to laugh too, but the attempt resulted in such an odd contortion of countenance as it showed that there was no danger in his pluming himself on the kiss. As for the king, his dignity was greatly hurt, but he did not speak to the page for a whole month. I may remark here that it was very amusing to see her run, if her mode of progression could properly be called running. For first she would make a bound, then having alighted she would run a few steps and make another bound. Sometimes she would fancy that she had reached the ground before she actually had, and her feet would go backwards and forwards, running upon nothing at all, like those of a chicken on its back. Then she would laugh for the very spirit of fun. Only in her laugh was there something missing. What it was, I found myself unable to describe. I think it was a certain tone, depending on the possibility of sorrow. Morbidezza, perhaps. She never smiled. However, here's this one picture I think you might enjoy. I can never quite tell if the camera's getting it all, so I just kind of pan it up and down. Chapter 7. Try Metaphysics. After long avoidance of the painful subject, the king and queen resolved to hold a council of 3 upon it, and so they sent for the princess. In she came, sliding and flitting and gliding from one piece of furniture to the other, and put herself at last in an armchair in a sitting posture. Whether she could be said to sit, seeing as she received no support from the seat of the chair, I do not pretend to determine. "My dear child," said the king, "you must be aware by this time that you are not exactly like other people." "Oh, dear funny papa, I have got a nose and 2 eyes and all the rest. So have you. So has mamma." "Now be serious, my dear, for once," said the king. "No, thank you, mamma. I had rather not." "Would you like to be able to walk like other people?" said the king. No, indeed, I should think not. You only crawl. You are such slow roaches. Coaches. Slow coaches. Not slow roaches. Slow coaches. How do you feel, my child? He resumed after the pause of discomfiture. Quite well, thank you. I mean, what do you feel like? Like nothing at all, that I know of. You must feel like something. I feel like a princess with such a funny papa and such a dear pet of a queen mamma. Now really, began the queen, but the princess interrupted her. Oh yes, she added, I remember. I have a curious feeling sometimes, as if I were the only person that had any sense in the whole world. She had been trying to behave herself with dignity, but now she burst into a violent fit of laughter, threw herself backwards over the chair, and went rolling on the floor in an ecstasy of enjoyment. The king picked up her easier than one does a down quilt, and replaced her in her former relation to the chair. The exact proposition expressing this relation I do not happen to know. Is there nothing you wish for? Resumed the king, who had learned at this time that it was useless to be angry with her. Oh, you, dear papa, yes, she answered. What is it, my darling? I have been longing for such a time, ever since last night. Excuse me. Tell me what it is. Will you promise to let me have it? The king was at the point of saying yes, but the wiser queen checked him with a single motion of her head. Tell me what it is first, said he. No, promise first. I dare not. What is it? Mind, I hold you to your promise. Is it to be tied to the end of a string, a very long string indeed, and to be flown like a kite? Oh, such fun! I would rain rose water and hail sugar plums and snow whipped cream, and. A fit of laughter checked her, and she would have been off again on the floor had not the king started up and caught her just in time. Seeing nothing but the talk could get out of her, he rang the bell and sent her away with 2 of her ladies in waiting. Now, queen, he said, turning to her majesty, what is to be done? There is but one thing left, answered she. Let us consult the college of metaphysicians. Bravo, cried the king. We will. All right. I love you, Christy. Sleep well, keep calm, find a llama, carry on, and we'll continue from there at the point of the metaphysicians, as chapter 7 is a very long chapter in relation to the other ones. But I love you. Sleep well and dream sweetly. I'll be home soon. I love you, and good night.